are the products of modern chemistry.
Drinking coffee is one of life's pleasures, a pleasure that cannot be duplicated by any other beverage.
Welcome to this episode of Weird Coffee Science, and today we're going to be messing around and having some fun with the buffer. To explain this, I'm going to have to talk to you about water chemistry in relation to coffee brewing, and lots of you are hoping that this is going to be that video, the one that explains everything, the one that says which is the right sort of water chemistry for the best tasting coffee. This is not that video. I am going to talk to you about a couple of key aspects of water chemistry though, but before we begin I do need to shout out Scott Rayo. This is ultimately his idea. He mentioned this kind of big idea to me when he was in London, and it's nagged at the back of my brain, and I wanted to try it, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity. So let's talk water chemistry. And I'm going to do it in a way that I hope is simple enough that if you don't care that much, it still makes sense. And if you do care, you don't feel like I'm basically lying to you. Now, for a long time, we talked about TDS in water, and that's total dissolved solids. And if you look at, say, the back of a bottle of mineral water, you'll be able to see what kind of minerals are dissolved in that water. Now, TDS is easy to measure. You can buy a cheap TDS meter. It'll tell you how much stuff is in the water. And we used that for a long time to kind of tune our recipes and tune our water treatment. But people like Maxwell colonna-dashwood were pretty vocal in saying TDS is kind of useless. It tells you that there's lots of stuff in there, but not what makes it up. And really, to massively oversimplify, there are two big categories of things when it comes to coffee that are important. The first are the minerals, things like calcium, things like magnesium. These are necessary to help extract coffee flavor. Too much can be bad, but not enough can be bad as well. With calcium and magnesium, they each get involved in slightly different reactions, so having a load of calcium will produce a brew that tastes quite different to having a load of magnesium. We're not going to get too deep into that today. The other key aspect of water chemistry is what's called the buffer, the alkalinity of the water. Buffering compounds, when they go into solution, produce both a weak acid and a weak base in that solution, right? So if you add an acid to them, that base reacts with that acid and it neutralizes it. That way, your pH doesn't move too much if you add an acid to a buffered solution. Now, things like your blood have a ton of buffer in them, because if the pH of your blood moves much at all, you're dead. That's very bad. Now, in water, bicarbonate acts as the buffering kind of compound here. So you'll see a correlation between the level of bicarbonate and its alkalinity, its buffering potential. If you took a filter coffee and you had a ton of buffer in that water, you'd mute out a lot of interesting flavors. It would be very boring. Now, most of the time that we talk about brewing water for coffee, we're often talking about filter coffee. Now, the strength of filter coffee is usually between, let's say, 1.3 to 1.5%. That's how much of that coffee is dissolved coffee, and the rest, the 98.7 to the 98.5, that's just water. Filter coffee is not particularly strong at all. Now, espresso, well, that has a much higher concentration. At that point, you're looking at maybe 8 through 10, even 12% strength. Scott's suggestion was, what if the amount of buffer correlated to the strength of the beverage, right? Having the right amount of buffer for filter coffee, well, that might not be the right amount of buffer for espresso. What if you had, let's say, 7 times more buffer in your espresso? What would happen? Would that moderate the acidity of a super light roast, a kind of filter coffee roast that when you brew it as espresso is just brutally, dominantly, unpleasantly acidic? So what we're going to do is this. We're going to take a coffee, we're going to take a Kenyan coffee that was roasted for filter drinking, and we're going to make some espresso with it. That's going to be our benchmark, because we can extract that, but that end result as an espresso may not taste that good. Let's start by getting an espresso machine. Let's start by dialing it in with just some nice brewing water and pulling shots of this light roast, filter roast kind of coffee and seeing how that tastes. What we're going to do here to start off with is take some reasonably normal brewing water. It's relatively low in both minerals and actually relatively low in buffer. But that's okay because I actually want a benchmark of what will be a very acidic espresso. I'm going to dose 20 grams into this machine. I'm going to pull 40 grams out in around 28 to 30 seconds. There should be a lot of acidity in the cup, which is what we want for this experiment. I need some espresso. We've got the all-important teaspoon. We can give this espresso a little stir. Ooh, that's got a lot of acidity. That's got a lot of acidity in it. This is exactly what I wanted to explore. This is a great benchmark. So this, there's a ton of origin characteristics here. I can taste the coffee that went in there. There is a ton of sweetness in this, but my, oh my, this is sour. So, wow. So on to our first experiment. So what I've done, and you just have to trust me on this because I can't actually prove it to you, is I've changed the water inside this machine's tank. And we've gone to a very high alkalinity water. It's like 350 milligrams per liter alkalinity, which is about 7 times more than you would have in, say, good brewing water. The question is, if you're going at much higher concentrations, if the concentration of espresso is 7 times higher than that of filter-ish, does the 7 times higher alkalinity give you balance wherein you would usually struggle? There's only one way to find out. We have to make more delicious espresso. So same thing, 20 grams of coffee in, 40-ish grams of coffee out, and around about 30 seconds. That's our benchmark. Let's make it happen. Looks good. Acid's definitely there, but it doesn't hurt my face. Still maybe a touch more acid than I might want. Yeah, a little harsh, not bad. Not bad, better than before. No physical pain as before. Now that's definitely interesting, but there is one big problem. High levels of bicarbonate coupled with reasonably high levels of minerals coupled with a hot environment equals lime scale. So this kind of water is much more likely to scale up a machine and cause you problems. At this point, there's something interesting here, but I'm not sure I'd recommend brewing with high alkalinity water. There is one more idea to discuss, but before we do that, I just need to tell you about this video's sponsor, which is Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and to run your business. If you want all the information contained in today's video, then there's a link to my website down below, and that's a website that I built with Squarespace. It was so quick and it was so easy to do. I could create something beautiful, but something unique, something that was mine. I could take one of their myriad of templates and customize it very simply. Beyond that, I don't have to worry about patching or installing upgrades. It's all taken care of. And if I do have an issue, there's 24/7 email support. That really matters to me. Now, as someone active across a number of social media sites, I love the way that Squarespace interacts with them. It makes it super easy to import content from places like Instagram or Twitter, but at the same time, I can simultaneously publish back to those platforms. It makes it a super easy hub for my work. So why not head to squarespace.com and sign up for a free trial? Build a website, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/JamesHoffmann or use James Hoffmann as a discount code to get 10% off your first website or domain name. Thanks so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, I did have a second experiment in mind. What I wanted to do was brew that kind of benchmark espresso, but add the alkalinity in afterwards. You see, alkalinity is going to affect the extract of coffee, right? It's going to affect the liquid, it's going to affect the pH of that liquid. It can affect it if you add it into the machine, but there's no real reason that you couldn't just add it into the cup and still have that buffering effect on the acidity of the cup. Now, you're going to need a lot more bicarb here, like a lot more. So I've made up a solution just using sodium bicarbonate. So this is 2,000 milligrams per liter of alkalinity. That's a lot. So what we should be able to do is just add maybe 5 grams of that water, slightly dilute our espresso, but then add a bunch of buffer to that drink to see if it kind of mops up some acidity. So what we're going to need to do, of course, is to brew another espresso. give it a little taste just to give myself a benchmark. Yep. That's still very sour. So I have my super high alkalinity water here, and I'm going to add maybe 5 grams. So does this work? Yes, it does. There's still tons of acid here. Like there's still an overwhelming level of acidity in the coffee that the buffer, 5 grams of this buffer isn't going to kind of mop it all up, but goodness me, that's an interesting change. Now I'm trying to work out if it's in other ways changing or messing with my perception of the coffee. I feel like there's been a textural change here. God, I know we need to do this double blind and there's some flaws here, but there's no question that has changed the experience of this coffee. It is more enjoyable to drink. I don't know what this means. I know that coffee science is weird. I think we've got something kind of cool here. I think we've got something really fun and definitely something that you at home can play with. Get some bicarbonate of soda. And it's important that you get bicarbonate of soda. Don't get baking powder that has other stuff. You want bicarbonate of soda, sodium bicarbonate. That's what you want. It's cheap, it's everywhere, it's in every grocery store. Get some. You probably have some already. Dissolve it in water. I used about 3.2 grams per liter to produce water that had about 2,000 milligrams per liter of alkalinity. Now, you could probably double that, actually, and be able to then use less in your espresso. But this is so easy to do, and I think you should totally do it. The potential is kind of interesting here. I'd be really interested to hear if you don't like this. The point here is that you could have like a little dropper bottle of water that has super high alkalinity. And if you pull a shot that's well extracted, but just that little bit too acidic, 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops, 1 gram, 2 grams, maybe that rounds it out. Maybe that cleans it up. Maybe you don't lose any origin characteristics. Maybe you keep everything you like. You know, historically, we used sugar to fix acidity, right? If you take lemon juice, if you add sugar to it, it becomes pleasant. The pH doesn't change, but the perceived acidity does. Here, we're messing with the pH, and it changes the kind of acidity in a different way than sugar does, right? But it doesn't skew things, it doesn't obscure things in the same way. It's super interesting. I want you to try it and tell me why this is a bad idea. Tell me why this is stupid. Tell me why this is wrong. Tell me if it just makes you feel weird adding a little bit of bicarb of soda to your espresso. I think with lots of coffees it won't work, right? Like this is for light roasted coffees that taste really good but are just too acidic when you brew them as espresso, where that concentration is just overwhelming. I would love to hear your thoughts if you try this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day.